EA have admitted Battlefield's failure and blamed Halo. That's a very easy, memeable way to spread it out. But being real, they launched a very, very messy game, and John Halo came in, took them out the back, and shot them.
Yep.
I mean, if I was choosing which game to play, I know what one I would at that time.
Yeah.
Now, this is interesting. So we have a lot of talk. There's been so much going on about Battlefield 2042 that we haven't talked about. Over the last few weeks, I've heard from Battlefield influencers and stuff like that. People just saying, whoa, what the hell? They're actually hitting me up? They're actually trying to solicit our opinions? What's going on? Maybe showing that when something gets completely busted, I don't know, they like activate Laura Miele and she comes in and is like, what the hell? What are we... They try to fix it. So let's get into this story of EA and 2042. Now, this is according to Tom Henderson, a big Battlefield leak man. EA recently had their usual town hall call for executives and staff, but this one spent over 20 minutes. Oh, wow, 20 minutes.
That's less than we've talked about.
Discussing Battlefield 2042's failure. So the Chief Studios officer, Laura Miele, held this discussion saying that it failed to meet expectations of our players and clearly missed our own expectations. Now, Laura's a name you may have heard from many other things. She basically set up the task force that repaired Battlefront 2.
And seems to be doing it again.
And seems to be doing it again, which is great. So here's what they think the key factors are. The first one is that, and this is probably something that does stand up to what we've heard from Henderson's, talking as well, where Frostbite basically needed huge updates to match 2042. According to Henderson, that took over 18 months of development time alone. So no wonder that level of final product polish just wasn't able to happen because they seemingly were still getting their tech in line. So there's that. Now, Miele said that moving all of the work that was done on the old version of Frostbite, and then you sort of moving it onto the new version, that was basically like putting the game onto a new engine. And the thing is, whenever you do that, there's always just loads of weird bugs.
Yeah,
loads of little things that you can't really account for because you're just dealing with so many different variables, so many things are different, and that hampers polish. Does not hamper as much their ability to just make a map, basically, but to actually... bugs, problems like that, they'll totally crop up. Now, she also said that the pandemic and transition to work from home also hurt, which, fair enough,
given that everyone. That was all happening. That all happened during this game's development, so it's a case where, people can't use it as an excuse going forward, but for games that were actively in development over, 2020, you're like, 100%. You still should have delayed it, but the difficulties are obvious. They're there.
Yeah. Now, this is where it gets interesting, where she admitted that the beta provided a lot of feedback and bugs and issues, but said there was a lot more positive feedback.
Yeah.
And I think that's actually true and fair. Because during the beta, number one, it's the beta, so the performance isn't that good. You sort of expect that. You expect some fixes to happen. And also, it's the more engaged, hey, I want to play Battlefield. It's those people who are on the beta. That's why I was on the beta. And that's the sort of thing where you're kind of looking at where it could be. It's obviously a very different experience when people put their money down and they actually get a product.
Yeah, that's one of the things from covering what the Warcraft bit is over the years. You see the experience where positive feedback means a substantial amount less than negative feedback.
Oh, yeah.
I've generally seen this unfold. You're like, no, you definitely want to say, oh, all this positive feedback's good, but let's not think about it because this will just be people excited to see a new entry. There'll be a lot of positivity bias from people who are getting in to play the beta and have the first thing. They're going to have a novelty experience that adds a lot of positivity versus the people who are, everyone with a negative feedback more likely to be actual canaries in the coal mine.
Yeah. So this is where it's interesting, where the early critical reception was apparently good after the day one patches. Wasn't great. I remember Skill Up's review in progress, where it was not a great review, but it also wasn't thrashing the game. He wasn't saying it was a 3 out of 10 or whatever the Steam score was. But she says the surprise release of Halo Infinite basically caused things to take a turn for them. Saying that, it was a polished and stable title, which basically just made Battlefield look so much worse by comparison. And what's great here is Tom Henderson's flown in to give us a little bit more context. We supposedly have Laura's words. This is unconfirmed, but basically just saying they launched in early access on Thursday night in the US, Friday morning and afternoon for Europe and Asia. The game was stable at that time. The mean time between failure in hours of the game was in the green by industry standards, and the early critical reception was good. So that's just interesting, like actually getting a little bit of an insight into the sorts of telemetry that these companies are going to be looking at as one of these products goes live. The day-to-day player retention looked strong through the weekend, but then it started to turn. The following Monday, Halo did a surprise release of their multiplayer mode, a small segment of the game, but it was very polished, and it was not a favorable comparison to our experience, given the bugs and polish issues. So I'd say that's true, but also that retention could initially be good, and then people will start to notice where the cracks are. Yeah. Because Battlefield is very much an experience where the devil is going to be in the details. And as for the community's response, yeah, Battlefield 5 has more players than 2042 in Steam. Yep. So that's pretty rough.
Yeah, that's the thing where it's like, Halo killed our game, it's all Halo's fault, is what people are taking away from this. I don't think that's not. I think people are sort of latching on to that a bit heavy.
Yeah,
but it is still where, Battlefield 5 has more players on Steam than Halo.
Yeah.
So, are you going to blame Battlefield 5? Like, fuck, that game we released,
Whoops.
Battlefield 5 killed Battlefield 2042. Wait, that's ours, wait, what?
Yeah, like it was certainly a bad look, but absolutely the failures are DICE's. The core Halo audience, funny enough, isn't really the core Battlefield audience.
Not at all.
Given that historically they had been leading different platforms.
Yeah.
She explains that the three key points of the failure are, so for the first of the points, basically she talks about bugs and performance, saying that, and this is quite funny, acknowledging that Battlefield games are usually buggy, but that, 2042 was within that range, and then she made some sort of funky comments, to be honest. Here's just the quote.
And it's a reiteration of what Andrew Wilson said before.
Yeah. DICE historically is very good at adapting games in live service, connecting with players, connecting with the community, and getting the game to the place the players expect. Okay.
That seems like historical revisionism to me.
Especially for Battlefield 5, that is complete tripe, Laura. Your people just are not giving you good information if that's what you think. We even had the producer who had worked at DICE LA talk about, oh no, they're literally not listening to you. They've made this change in like 6 months. If the numbers don't go in a certain way, they'll revert the change. And like clockwork, what that ex-producer said is what happened. So no. Game design and feature choices. Scoreboard, VoIP, specialist systems, those things were all mentioned, but we kind of know they've been working on some of those things. Obviously, specialist is just tricky because they've committed to that top-level design. If they did a major update to the game that just removed the feature and went back to regular classes, I think that would be great. That would be a rallying point for the community. Yeah. I don't think they're going to do that. And also the game not aligned with player expectations. That's something they admitted, saying they did not go wide enough with player testing nor deep enough, which was a big miss for the game. Yeah, so they've got a new initiative coming this month to just get like public feedback on the map design because they understand that's been a miss as well.
Yeah, so I think that's where what you were talking about earlier with the influencers, mentioning that they've been in contact, or EA have been in contact with them. I think that's going to be a big part of it going forward. Them actually going, listen, we have no idea what we're doing. We clearly don't have a clue like which players to target. So we're going to
they're utterly fucking listless, dude.
Yeah, so I think that's probably the way, a good way for them to go then, is to go, listen, you're the Battlefield influencers, you've been with this game thick and thin, could you please tell us in your own words what we need to do or what we're doing wrong, because we need that perspective from outside, because clearly we don't have it.
It's like they don't really understand just how Battlefield 1, 5, and 4, which funny enough came in the release order of 4, 1, and then 5.
Yeah,
they're entirely... Oh, there we go. But they're entirely different games. As a Battlefield person who plays Battlefield games, like they're super different. I think a lot of people aren't, if you're like just sort of see what a Battlefield game is in a trailer, you might not see that. But for the dedicated players, like they are very different games. 5 represents so much of them really struggling to work out what their vision is, both tonally and also mechanically. Now, for what Henderson's opinion is, and I think his opinion is extremely relevant here because he's been so deeply entwined with this unfolding story. So Henderson says, on a personal note, overall to me, it seemed that EA was either still grasping as to why 2042 failed, or they just didn't want to share those details with the team. I've said time and time again, all of the issues that players have with 2042 were not only brought up during the beta, but during the playtest that leaked online. Over 3 months after launch, none of these issues have been addressed, which could still indicate problems with the new and improved Frostbite engine. Now, he says he does believe the future could be a lot brighter because of the leadership team that's been tasked with making 2042 Season 1 a lot better.
Yep, and he calls Byron Bade, Rebecca Kotaz, Christian Grass, Marcus Leto, and Vince Sampella strong leaders. And you're like, damn straight. So with Laura and Vince and that strike team coming, there is a decent chance that they'll do a Battlefront 2, but it depends on how much capability they actually have to fix the game within the confines of what exists literally as the game is built and what they can do within Frostbite in sort of quick terms. Because they've got, until June before Season 1's content's going to be like, hey, we've fixed Battlefield, or we have no idea what we're doing, we're just going to burn it down and start afresh. But
which would be a mad thing to do.
Yeah, that's the thing. They can't really do that. The only thing they can do is pretend that they're keeping Battlefield 2042 alive, but really diverting a lot of resources away.
Yeah, well, I hope they don't do that.
Yeah.
Because what they need to do is they need to take the hit, and they actually just need to put the work in.
Yep.
I mean, imagine right now we're talking about Battlefield 5 beating 1. Could you imagine if 5 had proper continued support to the point where Battlefield 5 would have a quantity of multiplayer maps similar to Battlefield 1? How many more players would 5 have right now?
Yeah.
You know, they need to actually stick with one of these games. And this ultimately is the EA problem. Anthem could have been successful if they gave it another year. Battlefield 2042 could have been successful if they gave it another year. Battlefield 5 could have been a lot more successful if maybe they gave it, maybe it didn't need a year, maybe 6 months, whatever. But continually we have these games from EA that could have been so much better if the developers actually just had time to finish the game. And with 2042, it seems like they're struggling with all this tech, struggling with work from home and all of that. And then per Henderson's reporting, there was all the talk of, the initial really big battle royale that they were going to do. And then it changes as a game. And then we've got the 3 different modes, but the engine has got loads of problems. And, well, if the scope of the project has changed and the release date doesn't change in line with that, obviously you're going to have a shit show.
Yeah.
But this is not a good shit show because Battlefield 5 really messed up the Battlefield community. Battlefield 2042 has really messed up the Battlefield community. They've been constantly toyed around with. That's really bad. I don't know how they don't see that as being vitally important.
I think
you'll get that Battlefield revenue. You just have to be willing to take it a year later.
Yeah, and even then you go, well, obviously, why did you make the other Battlefields? Well, because we need the box sale, and we need our developers need something to do. But you look at Battlefield 5 doing so much better. Why did you make 2042? That's a real big question. I think they should ask themselves. Well, why did you make 2042?
From a Battlefield player's perspective, I can tell you, 5 is not 4. A lot of people, including me, loved 4. Actually, I like 5 as a game. It's just they messed up so much of it. But I liked its recall patterns for its guns and things like that, but it just needed more content and different. It's a story for another day.
Yeah.
But people wanted 4, and the idea of doing 4 with newer technology, learning all of the things they've learned with between 5 and 1. I mean, the movement mechanics in 5 and 1 just feels so smooth. Climbing over a thing, that stuff can just feel super immersive. In 5, a big bomb goes off near you, get blasted to the ground. And it's that's actually pretty cool. It really makes you feel like you're there, especially when you put DICE's. And it's funny that this is one of the things 2042 is not particularly great for, but DICE's almost trademark incredible audio design. Yeah. 5 was a pretty damn rich audiovisual experience that did place you in that Battlefield, and that was cool. So a lot of people just wanted 4 with the new bells and whistles and refinements and a lot of content, and just there was a great service. So I think 2042 is a perfectly valid game for them to have made. The problem is they didn't finish it.
Yeah.
And ultimately, the thing that gets me is, everybody is going around saying, yeah, well, they're a publicly traded company, so they're just pleasing their shareholders and all that. And I just think to myself, well, how did Amazon get to be one of the largest companies on Earth? Basically, the story is Jeff Bezos convincing the shareholders that he's not going to focus on profit for now, that he's going to focus on growth.
Yeah.
And of course, growth stocks, that's a whole thing these days. But, ultimately Amazon that's a case of they're like, okay, we're not really caring about our next quarter profits because we're trying to grow the company. We're trying to, do all this shit. And obviously Amazon have loads of failures as well and loads of other issues. I'm not discounting those. But surely any reasonable long-term investor, I mean, if I was to think about how I do my own personal finances, I don't want to be a day trader. That's a way to have no quality of life and to be stressed all the time. I want to select some good index funds and then maybe a few quality companies who I think really just, have it right in the long term, and you buy and you hold because time in the market is the most important thing. So I look at a situation like this and it's like, surely would investors in Electronic Arts not prefer a world where, well, the game comes out a bit later, but it's really good. The IP has grown, the brand has grown, and the recurring users are there. Or is it the case that those investors basically get misled by the Dean Takahashis of the world into all of this is fine and that's just angry, toxic gamers? Who knows?
That's almost certainly a part of it. I mean, to me, the analogy I keep thinking of for to characterize, as I say E3, to characterize EA, I don't know, because you've never not played a substantial amount of League of Legends, you may not have met this kind of person, but there's a person who would give up very early and say GG, go next, because things aren't going quite that well. I think EA are basically that, where they see things aren't going that well and go, just get it out. We might lose, but we'll get it out and we'll go to the next thing. That's what it feels to me, but they never they never ride things out to see how they'll go. And they also don't seem to do, until I guess recently, they've not seemed to do a whole bunch of reflection on why things have gone wrong. So it's that case of just, man, they really need to figure themselves out. And thankfully they seem to be doing this, but with just like one case where you make a game and finish it and then release it and it's good, instead of not finishing a game, releasing it and going, shit, we need to fix this. Because you're spending more time, more money, and more organizational effort fixing games than you are making them. And I think that's a bit of a problem.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's mostly it. Now, we should just say EA did respond to PC Gamer saying, these stories are not accurately capturing the discussion and the context, which was in-depth and very humble internal conversation about the recent Battlefield launch. That is according to EA Communications VP John Riesberg in a statement to PC Gamer. It was about key learnings and actions we are taking, not blaming external factors.
Yeah.
And I do think that's fair-ish. Like, Halo Infinite didn't kill them. No. I think it's very easy to meme the idea that they're blaming Halo. Yeah. But I think we can all acknowledge that when Battlefield is there, and some people have said that the beta looks a bit rumbly, not sure if it's going to run well in your machine, a few design issues we're not happy about, and then a very well-polished slice of Halo just arrives in the market at the same time and is free, and loads of PC gamers have wanted to try out Halo for a very long time, and now finally they can. Obviously, Halo is going to magnify the downsides of 2042.
Yeah, it's literally just, looking over to the fence and going, why can't we make our game like that? Hang on, we should maybe think about this.
Well, hopefully they learn that... we did a bare bones, we put out a big unpolished piece of shit, and this small bare bones, very polished game with not that many bugs completely destroyed us. Maybe they're going to learn something from that, and that's really the takeaway from this video. So play the long game, don't play the short game, because ultimately when all these big companies play the short game, we just get our time and money wasted, and that feels pretty bad, and it feels pretty damn bad when it's big important franchises, games that we've maybe played for well over a decade. It does feel like a little bit of a betrayal of the previous investment, not just financially, but also fiscally. That's not at all what I meant to say. I meant to say not just financially, but also emotionally.
Yeah.
On that scatterbrained note, I think that's it for the video.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. Respect people's time, respect people's cultural investment in your IP and your franchises, and then you'll go places.
Yeah.
I think that's what we're going to learn substantially. I mean, I don't want to start talking about Sony's Uncharted movie, which is doing extremely well according to critics. But yeah.
Yeah. There you go. Andrew, stop being a silly sausage. And with that, goodbye. Goodbye.